Maya Chen sat in the back corner of advanced physics, her worn notebook open to equations that looked far too complex for a 17-year-old. While her classmates struggled with basic quantum mechanics, she sketched diagrams that resembled technical schematics more than homework. Her teacher, Dr. Patterson, had long ago stopped calling on her after realizing she knew more about particle physics than he did. The other students whispered about her sometimes. The girl who never spoke unless spoken to, the one who ate lunch alone, reading books with titles they couldn't pronounce. They saw her flinch when doors slammed too loud, noticed how she always sat facing the exit, observed the way her eyes constantly scanned the room like she was expecting danger. What they didn't know was that Maya Chen wasn't really 17. She wasn't even human by Earth's current understanding of the term. 3 years ago, when the Zephyrian Collective had descended upon the outer colonies with their crystalline warships and energy weapons that could crack planets, humanity had been utterly unprepared. The aliens possessed technology thousands of years beyond human capability. Their warriors were genetically enhanced, their minds linked in a hive consciousness that made their tactics flawless and their resolve unbreakable. The war had lasted 18 months. 18 months of humanity being systematically exterminated across dozens of worlds. Earth's greatest scientists, generals, and strategists had thrown everything they had at the collective. Nothing worked. The aliens adapted to every weapon, countered every strategy, and showed no mercy to any human settlement they encountered. Then Dr. Elena Vasquez had approached the Terran Defense Council with a proposal so radical, so ethically questionable, that half the members had walked out of the meeting. She wanted to create something that had never existed before. A human consciousness capable of thinking beyond human limitations, backed by technology that didn't exist yet, and given the tactical knowledge of 1,000 lifetimes. The Aurora project had taken 6 months to complete. They had started with Maya Chen, a 12-year-old prodigy who had already solved several unsolved mathematical theorems. But they hadn't just enhanced her intelligence. They had rebuilt her on a cellular level, installing quantum processors in her neural tissue, replacing her skeletal structure with programmable matter, and giving her access to weapon systems that existed partially in folded space. Maya remembered the moment she had first fully awakened after the transformation. The universe had suddenly made sense in ways that terrified her. She could see the mathematical underpinnings of reality, could calculate probability cascades 17 steps into the future, and could feel the quantum signatures of every piece of technology within a 50-kilometer radius. But more importantly, she could understand the Zephyrian Collective in ways that pure humans never could. Their hive mind operated on quantum entanglement principles. Their tactics followed mathematical patterns that assumed their enemies would think in limited, biological ways. They had never encountered an opponent who could think in 11 dimensions while still maintaining human creativity and unpredictability. Now, sitting in her high school physics class 3 years later, Maya felt the familiar weight of memories that belonged to someone who had done terrible, necessary things. She had ended the war, yes, but the cost had been everything that made her genuinely human. The bell rang and students began packing their bags. Maya closed her notebook, careful not to let anyone see the weapon schematics she had been unconsciously drawing during the lecture about harmonic oscillators. As she stood to leave, her enhanced senses picked up an anomaly. The quantum background radiation in the classroom had shifted by 0.003%. She froze. That specific shift pattern was a signature she recognized. It was the kind of disturbance created by vehicles using Zephyrian phase shift technology. Maya's hand instinctively moved to her backpack, where her fingers brushed against what looked like an ordinary graphing calculator, but was actually a quantum interface device. Through it, she could access the weapon systems that had been folded into pocket dimensions and tethered to her consciousness. The war was supposed to be over. The Zephyrian Collective had been completely destroyed. She had made sure of that personally. But somehow, impossibly, they were here, on Earth, at her school. As Maya walked toward the classroom door, her mind was already running tactical assessments. If this was a scouting mission, she needed to eliminate the threat before it could report back. If this was an advance force, she needed to determine the size of the invasion fleet. If this was a trap specifically designed to find her, then she had perhaps minutes before her carefully constructed normal life became a battlefield. She stepped into the hallway, and her enhanced vision immediately identified the source of the quantum disturbance. 3 figures in human clothing were walking toward the main office. To everyone else, they would look like ordinary people. But Maya could see the telltale shimmer of holographic disguises, could detect the exotic matter signatures of their true forms underneath. The quiet girl in the back of the class had just become humanity's first and last line of defense once again. And this time, there would be no Dr. Vasquez, no Terran Defense Council, and no backup plan. There was only Maya Chen, pretending to be a normal teenager, carrying the accumulated tactical knowledge of a war that had ended the Zephyrian Collective's 1,000-year expansion across the galaxy. She had hoped never to use those abilities again. That hope had just died in a high school hallway on what should have been an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Maya forced herself to walk at a normal teenage pace as she followed the 3 disguised Zephyrians down the hallway. Her enhanced hearing picked up their conversation, conducted in ultrasonic frequencies that human ears couldn't detect. They were speaking in the mathematical language of the collective, discussing target acquisition and specimen retrieval. They were here for her. As she passed other students, Maya's tactical systems automatically began calculating casualty projections if this turned into a firefight. The numbers were horrifying. Jefferson High School housed nearly 2,000 students and staff. In an enclosed environment against Zephyrian combat forms, human casualties would approach 98% within the first 4 minutes. She couldn't let that happen. Maya ducked into the nearest bathroom and activated her quantum interface. The device looked like she was just checking her phone, but reality began to bend around her as she accessed the weapon systems that existed in folded space. Her reflection in the mirror shimmered as her true nature began to assert itself. For just a moment, she allowed herself to remember what she really was. During the war, the Terran Defense Council had called her their strategic asset. The Zephyrians had called her the Deviant in their final transmissions. But Maya knew what she truly was, a weapon shaped like a girl, carrying the memories of battles fought across star systems she could never visit again. Her consciousness split across 17 different processing threads as she began preparations. Thread 1 analyzed the school's architecture for optimal engagement zones. Thread 2 accessed satellite feeds to check for additional Zephyrian vessels in orbit. Thread 3 began calculating the probability matrices for each possible course of action. The calculations were interrupted by a scream from the main hallway. Maya burst out of the bathroom to find chaos erupting throughout the school. The 3 Zephyrians had dropped their human disguises, revealing their true forms. 8-foot-tall crystalline beings with too many joints and limbs that could shift between solid matter and pure energy. One of them had grabbed Marcus Webb, the quarterback who had tried to ask Maya to prom last month. "Attention humans," the lead Zephyrian announced, its voice carrying through the building via quantum resonance. "We seek the artifact designation Aurora. Surrender the weapon, child, or your young will be harvested for information." Students were screaming. Teachers were trying to establish lockdown procedures, and Maya felt the familiar coldness settle over her consciousness. The part of her that was still genuinely human retreated deep inside, leaving only the strategic asset in control. She stepped into the main hallway, and her presence immediately registered on the Zephyrian sensors. All 3 turned toward her with movements too fluid for their crystalline forms. The lead creature's optical sensors focused on her with interest that felt like ice water in her veins. "There you are," it said, releasing Marcus so suddenly that the boy collapsed to the floor. "The Aurora Project. We have come to understand how you achieved the impossible." Maya's voice when she spoke carried harmonics that made the windows vibrate. "The war ended 3 years ago. Your collective was completely destroyed. How are you here?" The creature that might have been smiling if it had possessed a face capable of expression. "You underestimate the scope of Zephyrian civilization, little weapon. What you destroyed was merely one collective. We are Zephyrian Collective Designation 779. We have traveled from the Andromeda Galaxy to study the tactics that eliminated our sister branch." Maya's processing threads immediately began calculating interstellar travel times and energy requirements. For a collective to travel between galaxies meant resources beyond anything humanity had imagined. This wasn't a scouting mission or a revenge mission. This was a research expedition. You didn't come to conquer, she realized. You came to learn. Precisely. Your species achieved something that our mathematical models indicated was impossible. A single human consciousness destroyed an entire collective branch. We must understand this deviation before it spreads. Other students were pressed against classroom walls, watching in terror as their quiet classmate faced down alien invaders. Maya could see Jessica Chen, no relation, recording everything on her phone. That video would be uploaded to social media within minutes. Humanity's secret about what had really ended the war was about to become very public. The lead Zephyrian continued speaking. "We have studied your species for months now. Humans are emotionally driven, tactically predictable, and technologically primitive. Yet somehow, you created something that thinks beyond our computational models. We will dissect this anomaly and ensure it never occurs again." Maya felt her weapon systems coming online. Energy began building in the folded space around her, invisible to everyone except the Zephyrians, whose sensors were suddenly registering impossible readings. The air itself began to shimmer as reality bent around her. "You're making the same mistake your sister collective made," she said quietly. "You're assuming that what I became was purely technological. You don't understand the most important component of the Aurora project." The Zephyrian's optical sensors narrowed. "Explain." Maya smiled, and for the first time in 3 years it wasn't the uncertain expression of a teenage girl. It was the predatory grin of something that had been specifically designed to hunt collectives across the galaxy. The technology was just the platform. The real weapon was human stubbornness, the complete irrational refusal to accept that anything is impossible. The first energy discharge lit up the hallway like a miniature star going nova, but instead of the devastating explosion the Zephyrians expected, the energy simply dispersed harmlessly around every human in the area. Maya had learned to contain her destructive potential during the war. She could level a city block or perform surgery with equal precision. The lead Zephyrian managed to say impossible before Maya's next attack reduced it to its component atoms. The other two began retreating, their forms shifting rapidly between matter states as they tried to escape. They didn't make it to the exit doors. When the light faded, Maya stood alone in a hallway full of unconscious students and staff. Her weapon systems had released a localized electromagnetic pulse that would wipe their memories of the last 15 minutes. As far as they would remember, there had been a minor power outage during lunch period. But Maya knew this was just the beginning. If one collective had found her, others would follow. Earth had become a target again, and this time she was the only line of defense. Maya stood in her bedroom that night, staring at the quantum communication device she had just assembled from seemingly ordinary electronics. The device looked like a modified gaming console, but it was actually capable of sending messages across galactic distances through folded space. She needed to contact the remnants of the Terran Defense Council, but after 3 years of believing the war was over, she wasn't even sure they still existed. The encounter at school had changed everything. Maya's enhanced processing capabilities had analyzed every scrap of data from the Zephyrian infiltrators, and the conclusions were terrifying. Collective 779 wasn't just from Andromeda. They were part of a vast network of collectives that spanned multiple galaxies. Humanity had only fought and defeated one small branch of an empire that contained trillions of beings. Worse yet, her victory had made Earth a curiosity. The Zephyrians couldn't understand how a primitive species had created something capable of thinking beyond their computational models. They would keep coming, sending research expeditions to study her, until they figured out how to replicate or counter the Aurora project. Maya activated the communication device and began searching for any remaining Terran defense frequencies. What she found instead made her blood run cold. The signals she intercepted weren't from Earth at all. They were Zephyrian communications from at least 7 different collective designations, all discussing the human anomaly and tactical deviation analysis. Earth was surrounded. The signals indicated collective fleets positioned beyond the solar system's edge, maintaining stealth while they debated how to proceed. Some wanted to study Maya in controlled conditions. Others suggested destroying Earth entirely to prevent the deviation from spreading. A few were arguing for attempting to recruit her into their own forces. None of the options ended well for humanity. Maya was processing this information when her enhanced senses detected movement outside her house. 3 figures in dark clothing were approaching through her backyard, moving with the fluid precision that indicated Zephyrian motor control in human-mimicking bodies. She sighed, and began charging her weapon systems. Apparently, Collective 779 had sent backup, but as the figures drew closer, Maya's tactical analysis subroutines flagged an anomaly. These weren't Zephyrians. The movement patterns were wrong, the body language was different, and their electromagnetic signatures indicated they were carrying human technology. When they reached her window, Maya recognized the lead figure and nearly let her guard down entirely. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked older than she should have after only 3 years. Her dark hair was streaked with white, and her face carried lines that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. But her eyes were the same brilliant brown that had looked at 12-year-old Maya and seen the possibility of saving humanity. Maya opened her window before Dr. Vasquez could knock. "Hello, Maya," the doctor said quietly. "We need to talk." The woman who had created the Aurora project climbed through the window with surprising agility, followed by 2 people Maya didn't recognize. One was a tall African man with cybernetic implants along his jawline. The other was an Asian woman whose left arm appeared to be entirely mechanical. "Dr. Vasquez," Maya said, and was surprised by how much relief flooded through her. "I thought everyone from the project was dead." "Most of them are," Dr. Vasquez replied grimly. "But some of us saw this coming. We've been monitoring Zephyrian communication frequencies for 3 years, waiting for exactly what happened today." The man with cybernetic implants stepped forward. "I'm Colonel James Morrison, formerly of Terran Special Operations. This is Dr. Sarah Kim, our technology specialist. We're what's left of Operation Lighthouse." Maya's enhanced memory banks immediately accessed files related to Operation Lighthouse. It had been a theoretical contingency plan, never officially approved, designed to handle the possibility that the Aurora project might attract unwanted attention from other alien civilizations. "You've been planning for this," Maya realized. "Since the day we created you," Dr. Vasquez confirmed. "We knew that what we did to win the war might have consequences. We just didn't expect them to take 3 years to manifest." Dr. Kim activated a holographic display that showed the current positions of the Zephyrian fleets. Maya counted 47 distinct vessels, each one capable of sterilizing Earth's biosphere. They were arranged in a perfect sphere around the solar system, maintaining position just outside the range where human instruments could detect them. "They're waiting," Colonel Morrison explained. "Our intelligence suggests they're having a philosophical debate about how to proceed. Some collectives want to capture you for study. Others want to destroy you to prevent the tactical deviation from spreading. They can't agree on which approach serves their long-term interests." Maya studied the fleet positions and began calculating engagement scenarios. Even with her enhanced capabilities, the numbers were impossible. She might be able to destroy 1 or 2 collective fleets before the others adapted to her tactics. But 47 fleets represented millions of individual combat units. "There's something else," Dr. Vasquez said quietly. "Something we never told you about the Aurora project." Maya turned to look at her creator. "What? You weren't the only one." The room fell silent. Maya's processing threads immediately began searching her memory banks for any reference to other Aurora subjects, but found nothing. "Dr. Chen, your namesake, was working on a parallel project called Aurora Beta," Dr. Vasquez continued. "Instead of enhancing a single individual to superhuman levels, she was developing technology to enhance normal humans to peak efficiency. The idea was to create entire units of enhanced soldiers rather than one strategic asset. What happened to the project? It was declared too dangerous and shut down." But Dr. Chen continued working in secret. She believed that humanity needed more than one enhanced individual to truly secure our future. She was working on a way to distribute Aurora-level enhancements to volunteers. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. "You're saying there could be other people like me?" "Not like you," Colonel Morrison interjected. Dr. Chen's approach was different. Instead of rebuilding someone from scratch, she was developing enhancement packages that could be applied to adult volunteers. The enhancements wouldn't be as comprehensive as yours, but they would be reversible, and they could be mass-produced. Dr. Kim pulled up another holographic display, this one showing a world map with dozens of marked locations. 3 months ago, we detected quantum signatures consistent with Aurora-level technology activating at these coordinates. Someone has been implementing Dr. Chen's protocols. Maya stared at the map. The locations were scattered across every continent, but they followed a pattern. Major cities, military installations, research facilities, and government centers. How many? She asked. Our best estimate is around 200 active Aurora Beta subjects, Dr. Vasquez replied. But we don't know who's controlling them or what their intentions are. Maya felt her tactical systems begin recalculating threat assessments. Earth wasn't just surrounded by alien fleets waiting to decide humanity's fate. There were potentially 200 enhanced humans somewhere on the planet, equipped with technology derived from her own transformation and operating according to an unknown agenda. The quiet girl in the back of the class was about to discover that she wasn't unique anymore. And in a universe where enhanced humans were the only thing standing between Earth and extinction, that might be either humanity's salvation or its final disaster. Maya's basement had been transformed overnight into a command center that would have impressed the original Terran Defense Council. Dr. Vasquez and her team had brought equipment that folded space-time to fit inside ordinary-looking briefcases, turning the underground room into a hub capable of monitoring communications across half the galaxy. We're getting reports from Aurora Beta sites worldwide, Dr. Kim announced, her mechanical fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Something's activated them simultaneously. Maya studied the incoming data streams. Each Aurora Beta subject was broadcasting a quantum signature, but the signals were coordinated in a way that suggested central control. Someone or something was directing their actions. Show me the activation pattern, Maya requested. The holographic display shifted to show a timeline of the activations. They had begun exactly 47 minutes after Maya's encounter with the Zephyrians at school. Someone had been monitoring alien communications and triggered the Aurora Beta network in response to the threat. Colonel Morrison's cybernetic implants flickered as he processed incoming intelligence reports. We're seeing enhanced individuals emerging at key strategic locations: Beijing, Moscow, Washington, D.C., London, Tokyo. They're not announcing themselves, but they're making contact with local military and intelligence agencies. Who's leading them? Maya asked. Unknown, Dr. Vasquez replied. But we have a theory. Dr. Chen disappeared 2 years ago while researching quantum consciousness transfer. We think she might have found a way to coordinate the Aurora Beta subjects through a shared network. Maya felt her enhanced senses pick up a familiar quantum disturbance. Another Aurora-level signature was approaching, moving faster than any human transportation could account for. She turned toward the basement stairs just as footsteps echoed from above. Maya, a voice called down. We need to talk. The voice belonged to a teenage boy, probably around Maya's apparent age. But when he descended the stairs, Maya's tactical systems immediately identified him as an Aurora Beta subject. His quantum signature was different from hers, less concentrated but more distributed, as if his enhancements were spread across multiple systems rather than integrated into a single consciousness. Dr. Vasquez reached for a weapon, but Maya held up a hand to stop her. You're Aurora Beta, Maya said to the newcomer. David Park, he replied, enhanced 6 months ago. I'm here representing the network. The network? David's eyes briefly unfocused, as if he was accessing information from an external source. 217 Aurora Beta subjects coordinated through quantum entanglement protocols. We've been monitoring the situation since the Zephyrian fleets arrived. Maya studied him with her enhanced senses. David's neural patterns showed signs of external influence. Not mind control, but something more like a wireless network connection. His consciousness was his own, but he had access to shared information and could communicate instantly with the other Aurora Beta subjects. What do you want? Colonel Morrison asked, his hand resting on a weapon that Maya suspected wouldn't be effective against enhanced individuals. To save Earth, David replied simply. The Zephyrian fleets aren't just studying Maya. They're preparing for a full-scale invasion of our galaxy. The Milky Way contains 17 species that showed signs of developing technology, similar to the Aurora project. The Zephyrians plan to eliminate all of them before the tactical deviation can spread. Dr. Kim's holographic displays suddenly lit up with new data. He's right. We're detecting Zephyrian fleet movements toward the Proxima Centauri system. They're not just threatening Earth. They're beginning a systematic extermination campaign. Maya felt her tactical systems shift into a higher processing mode. The situation had just escalated beyond Earth survival to the survival of human-allied civilizations across the galaxy. "What's the network's plan?" she asked David. His expression became grim. Dr. Chen's consciousness survived her physical death through quantum transfer protocols. She's been coordinating our development while monitoring Zephyrian communications. The plan is simple. We're going to do what you did to the first collective, but on a galactic scale. That's impossible, Dr. Vasquez interjected. The first war almost destroyed Maya psychologically, and she only faced one collective. There are dozens of them out there. David's eyes unfocused again as he accessed the network. Dr. Chen has been studying Maya's tactical records for 3 years. She believes that Aurora Beta subjects working in coordination can achieve what a single Aurora subject cannot: distributed processing power, shared tactical knowledge, and the ability to engage multiple targets simultaneously. Maya analyzed the proposal using her enhanced capabilities. The mathematics were theoretically sound, but the variables were staggering. Even with 200 enhanced individuals, they would be facing odds that made her original war look like a minor skirmish. There's something else, David continued. The network has been in contact with the other threatened species. The Altarians, the Vegan Confederacy, the Silicon Collective. They're all willing to share their technology if we can provide enhanced individuals to coordinate their forces. You're talking about a galactic alliance, Maya realized. Led by enhanced humans, yes. Dr. Chen's analysis suggests that human unpredictability, combined with Aurora-level processing power, represents the only tactical approach the Zephyrians can't counter. Maya was quiet for several minutes, running probability calculations and strategic assessments. The plan was audacious beyond belief, but her enhanced consciousness could see paths to victory that pure human thinking might miss. "What do you need from me?" she finally asked. David smiled, and for a moment he looked like the teenager he appeared to be. "Integration with the network. Your combat experience and tactical knowledge shared across all Aurora Beta subjects. With your memories and our distributed processing power, we might actually be able to pull this off." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. "Maya, be careful. We don't know what integration with the network might do to your consciousness. You've maintained your individual identity for 3 years. Joining a shared network could change that." Maya looked at her creator, the woman who had given her the power to save humanity once before. Then she looked at David, who represented the possibility of saving not just humanity, but an entire galaxy's worth of civilizations. "Dr. Chen is monitoring this conversation through my connection," David said quietly. "She wants you to know that integration is voluntary, and that your individual consciousness will be preserved. She's not trying to subsume you into the network. She's trying to give you the support system you should have had during the original war." Maya thought about the loneliness of the past 3 years. The isolation of carrying memories that no one else could understand. The weight of being humanity's only strategic asset in a universe full of threats. For the first time since her transformation, she wouldn't have to face impossible odds alone. "When do we start?" she asked. The integration process felt like stepping into an ocean of shared consciousness. Maya maintained her individual awareness, but suddenly she could feel the presence of 217 other minds, each enhanced and connected through quantum entanglement protocols that defied conventional physics. Dr. Chen's consciousness was the strongest presence in the network. She existed as pure information now, her biological form left behind when she had uploaded herself to coordinate the Aurora Beta project. When she spoke, it was directly into Maya's enhanced neural pathways. "Welcome home, Maya." Dr. Chen's voice carried warmth that Maya hadn't felt since before her transformation. "I've been waiting 3 years to tell you that you don't have to carry this burden alone anymore." Through the network, Maya could access the experiences and tactical knowledge of every Aurora Beta subject. She felt David's memories of infiltrating a Zephyrian research station on Europa. She experienced Lisa Martinez's successful defense of a civilian colony against collective scouts. She saw through the eyes of Kenji Nakamura as he coordinated with Altarian fleet commanders who had been fighting the Zephyrians for decades. But more than individual experiences, she could feel the collective processing power of the network. Her own enhanced consciousness, which had seemed impossibly vast when she was alone, now felt like one instrument in a symphony of tactical minds. "The Zephyrian fleets are moving," Dr. Chen announced to the network. "They've detected the Aurora Beta activations and are interpreting them as a prelude to human aggression. They're preparing to begin bombardment of Earth within 6 hours. Maya felt her tactical systems sync with the network's collective intelligence. Through shared processing, they began calculating defensive scenarios and counterattack possibilities. The mathematics were staggering in scope, tracking 47 fleets, projecting their movement patterns and identifying vulnerabilities in their formation. They're making the same mistake as the first collective, Maya realized, her thoughts echoing through the network. They're treating us as a conventional military threat. They don't understand that human tactics aren't based purely on mathematical optimization. David's consciousness touched hers through the network. Dr. Chen has been analyzing your original war records. She's identified 17 specific instances where you succeeded because you acted in ways that were tactically irrational, but strategically brilliant. Maya accessed those memories, but now she could see them through the analytical framework that Dr. Chen had built over 3 years. Her greatest victories had indeed come from decisions that violated standard tactical doctrine, attacking when retreat was logical, sacrificing strategic positions to protect civilian populations, using weapons in ways their designers had never intended. The network can amplify that unpredictability, Dr. Chen explained. While you rely on individual intuition, we can generate chaos at scale. 200 enhanced minds, each acting on incomplete information but with perfect coordination, can create tactical situations that no collective algorithm can predict. Through the shared consciousness, Maya felt the other Aurora Beta subjects beginning to move. They were positioned across Earth and throughout the solar system, some in locations she hadn't known were accessible to human technology. The network had been preparing for this confrontation for months. "How are you coordinating with the alien allies?" Maya asked. Dr. Chen's presence shifted, and Maya found herself accessing communication channels she hadn't known existed. The Altarians have quantum communication technology that's compatible with our network protocols. The Vegan Confederacy has been sharing tactical data about Zephyrian weaknesses. The Silicon Collective has provided computational support for our strategic calculations. Maya could see it now, a galactic alliance coordinated through the Aurora Beta network, with enhanced humans serving as tactical coordinators for dozens of alien civilizations. It was the kind of large-scale cooperation that the Zephyrians' mathematical models couldn't account for, because their collective consciousness couldn't understand the voluntary surrender of individual tactical control. "The first wave is beginning," David announced through the network. Maya felt her consciousness expand as she accessed sensor data from across the solar system. The Zephyrian fleets had begun their approach, moving in perfect mathematical formations that maximized their firepower while minimizing exposure to counterattack. Their tactics were flawless by conventional standards, but Maya and the network weren't conventional. "Implementing Chaos Protocol 17, Dr. Chen announced. Through the network, Maya experienced what happened next from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Aurora Beta subjects throughout the solar system began activating technology that shouldn't have existed. Weapons platforms hidden in asteroid belts, defensive systems integrated into seemingly ordinary satellites, and attack craft that had been constructed using folded space technology. But instead of engaging the Zephyrian fleets in direct combat, the network began implementing tactics that were deliberately inefficient, seemingly counterproductive, and mathematically irrational. Aurora Beta subjects abandoned advantageous positions, attacked secondary targets instead of primary ones, and used their weapons in configurations that violated their designed specifications. To the Zephyrians, it looked like humanity had finally revealed its hidden military capabilities, but was employing them incompetently. Their algorithms began calculating human defeat scenarios based on the apparently poor tactical decisions they were observing. That was exactly what Dr. Chen had planned. The Zephyrians are adapting their formation to counter our apparent mistakes, Maya observed through the network. They're positioning themselves to exploit our tactical errors, which means they're positioning themselves exactly where we want them. Dr. Chen replied. Maya felt the second phase beginning. The mistakes the Aurora Beta subjects had been making weren't errors at all. They were positioning maneuvers designed to force the Zephyrian fleets into specific geometric arrangements. Arrangements that looked advantageous to the aliens, but were actually optimal for the kind of large-scale attack that the network had been planning. Through her connection to the alien allies, Maya could feel Altarian battlecruisers moving into position beyond the asteroid belt. Vegan Confederacy stealth ships were approaching from galactic north. The Silicon Collective had deployed computational warfare viruses that would activate when the Zephyrian fleets reached predetermined coordinates. The quiet girl who had sat in the back of physics class had become the tactical coordinator for the largest military alliance in galactic history, and the Zephyrians, for all their advanced technology and mathematical precision, had no idea what was about to hit them. The battle for Earth's solar system lasted exactly 17 minutes and 43 seconds. Maya experienced every moment of it through the collective consciousness of the network, watching as human unpredictability met Zephyrian mathematical perfection in a confrontation that redefined the physics of warfare. The Zephyrian fleets had positioned themselves in what their algorithms calculated as optimal attack formations, ready to exploit what they perceived as human tactical errors. They had no way of knowing that every mistake had been carefully orchestrated to draw them into a perfect killing zone. Maya felt the moment Dr. Chen gave the activation signal. Across the solar system, hidden weapons platforms that had been disguised as space debris suddenly came online. Altarian battlecruisers materialized from behind planetary bodies, where they had been waiting in stealth mode. Vegan Confederacy ships phased into normal space from dimensions the Zephyrians didn't know existed. But the real devastation came from the Aurora Beta subjects themselves. Through the network, Maya experienced the impossible sensation of being in 200 different locations simultaneously. Each enhanced human had access to weapon systems that existed partially in folded space, allowing them to project destructive force across interstellar distances. Combined with the alien allies' technology, they could create focused attacks that struck from directions the Zephyrians couldn't defend against. Implementing variable geometry protocol, Dr. Chen announced through the network Maya watched as the Aurora Beta subjects began using their weapons in ways that violated every known law of physics. Instead of firing at the Zephyrian ships directly, they were firing into folded space and allowing the quantum effects to carry their attacks through alternate dimensions. The result was devastating energy discharges that materialized inside Zephyrian vessels, bypassing their shields entirely. The Zephyrian response was immediate and mathematically perfect. Their fleets began reorganizing to counter the new threat, their algorithms calculating optimal defensive positions and counterattack vectors. Within minutes, they had identified the sources of the attacks and were preparing to eliminate them. That's when Dr. Chen activated the second phase of the strategy. Remember, her consciousness touched every member of the network. The goal isn't to destroy them. It's to teach them something they've never learned. Through the shared tactical awareness of the network, Maya understood what Dr. Chen meant. The Zephyrians were a collective consciousness that had existed for millennia, conquering galaxy after galaxy through mathematical precision and technological superiority. They had never encountered true chaos, the kind of beautiful, irrational unpredictability that emerged from individual consciousness working together without surrendering their autonomy. The Aurora Beta subjects began implementing tactics that were not just unconventional, but actively contradictory. Some attacked aggressively while others retreated. Some focused on primary targets while others engaged secondary objectives. Some used their weapons at maximum power, while others fired at seemingly random intervals. To any conventional military analysis, the human forces appeared to be operating without coordination, making decisions that actively hindered their own effectiveness. But the network was operating on a level of tactical complexity that transcended individual rational decision-making. Maya felt it through her connection to the collective consciousness, the emergence of patterns that were greater than the sum of their parts. The seemingly chaotic actions of individual Aurora Beta subjects were creating large-scale effects that no single tactical mind could have planned. It was like watching evolution accelerated to the speed of thought, with tactical adaptation happening faster than Zephyrian algorithms could process. The Zephyrian fleets began experiencing something they had never encountered in their 1,000-year expansion: uncertainty. Their mathematical models couldn't predict what the human forces would do next, because the humans themselves didn't know what they would do next. Each Aurora Beta subject was responding to local conditions, while trusting the network's collective intelligence to coordinate their actions into something greater than chaos. "They're trying to withdraw," David reported through the network. Maya accessed sensor data and confirmed that several Zephyrian fleets were attempting to retreat to safer positions. But their withdrawal patterns were being predicted and countered by the alien allies, who had learned to work with human unpredictability rather than against it. "Altarian forces are reporting something unprecedented," Dr. Chen announced. "The Zephyrian vessels are beginning to act independently. Their collective consciousness is fragmenting under the tactical stress." Through the network, Maya could sense what was happening. The Zephyrians' mathematical approach to consciousness had always been their greatest strength, allowing perfect coordination across vast distances. But it was also their greatest weakness. When faced with truly unpredictable opposition, their collective minds couldn't adapt fast enough, and individual Zephyrian consciousness began asserting themselves. For the first time in their species' history, Zephyrians were thinking as individuals rather than as components of a greater mathematical whole. "Dr. Chen," Maya said through the network. "They're learning." "Yes," came the reply. That was the point. Maya realized that this had never been just about defending Earth or even winning a galactic war. Dr. Chen had been attempting something far more ambitious, teaching an entire alien civilization how to think beyond mathematical optimization. The Zephyrian fleet suddenly stopped their attack entirely. Through the communication systems of the alien allies, Maya could hear Zephyrian commanders broadcasting in their mathematical language. But the content was unlike anything in their species' previous communications. They were asking questions. Not tactical assessments or strategic calculations, but genuine questions about concepts they had never encountered: individual choice, creative problem solving, and the deliberate acceptance of inefficiency in service of larger goals. "This is Fleet Commander Designation 779, came a transmission directed at Earth. "We request communication with the Aurora consciousness. We have observed tactical impossibilities and require clarification of the mathematical principles involved." Maya felt Dr. Chen's consciousness focus through the network. "Maya, they're asking to speak with you specifically. You're the one who first demonstrated that individual consciousness could transcend mathematical limitation. They want to understand how." Maya found herself at the center of a moment that would reshape galactic civilization. The quiet girl who had sat in the back of physics class was about to become humanity's first ambassador to an alien species that was learning how to be individuals. Maya stood in what had once been the gymnasium of Jefferson High School, now converted into a diplomatic meeting facility that hosted the most important conversation in galactic history. Through the windows, she could see the Zephyrian delegation ships hovering in perfect formation above the school parking lot, a sight that would have terrified her 3 days ago, but which now represented the beginning of something unprecedented. The Zephyrian delegation consisted of 12 individuals who had voluntarily separated themselves from their collective consciousness for the first time in their species' history. They stood in the gymnasium like crystalline sculptures, their forms shifting between solid matter and pure energy as they struggled to process individual thoughts without the support of their mathematical hive mind. "This is difficult," admitted the being who had identified herself as Fleet Commander 779 Individual Alpha. The very concept of individual designation was so new to her species that they had no proper words for it. "We experience something you call loneliness. We do not understand why you choose this state." Maya accessed the network's collective consciousness, feeling the presence of Dr. Chen and the other Aurora Beta subjects providing support and tactical analysis. But when she spoke, the words were her own. "We don't choose loneliness," Maya explained. "We choose the possibility of connection. When every mind is different, when every individual can think thoughts that no one else has ever thought, then when we do connect with each other, it means something that mathematical coordination can never achieve." The Zephyrians' optical sensors flickered as they processed this concept. Dr. Vasquez, who was monitoring the conversation from a nearby control station, had warned Maya that this kind of philosophical discussion could take days or even weeks for the aliens to fully comprehend. "Demonstrate," requested another Zephyrian, one who had designated himself as Tactical Analyst Individual Beta. Show us how individual consciousness creates tactical advantages that our collective models cannot predict. Maya smiled and looked around the gymnasium. Her classmates were there, Marcus, Jessica, and dozens of others who had no idea they were witnessing the moment that would determine whether galactic civilization evolved or remained locked in mathematical stagnation forever. David, Maya said to her fellow Aurora subject, who was standing near the basketball hoops, show them the Jefferson High defensive maneuver. David grinned and began coordinating with the other students. What followed was something that looked like chaos to alien observers but felt like perfect harmony to anyone who had ever been part of a human community. Students began moving throughout the gymnasium in patterns that seemed random but were actually based on social connections, personal preferences, and individual decision-making. Marcus naturally positioned himself where he could protect the younger students. Jessica gravitated toward areas where she could document what was happening. The art students found spots with good lighting. The athletes unconsciously formed defensive perimeters. None of it was planned. None of it was optimized. But within minutes, the students had self-organized into a formation that provided optimal protection for the most vulnerable members while maintaining maximum flexibility for adaptation to changing conditions. Each individual made decisions based on their own priorities and capabilities, Maya explained to the Zephyrians, but because they trust each other and share common values, their individual choices created something greater than any mathematical optimization could achieve. The Zephyrian delegation spent several minutes analyzing the formation with their enhanced sensors. Maya could see their confusion growing as they realized that no amount of computational power could have predicted the exact pattern that had emerged. Impossible, Fleet Commander Alpha said finally. The variables are too numerous. The calculations would require— You're still thinking like a collective, Dr. Chen's voice interrupted, broadcast through speakers that made her consciousness audible to everyone in the gymnasium. You're trying to calculate what can only be experienced. You're trying to predict what can only be lived. Maya felt the network's collective processing power focusing on this moment. Through her enhanced consciousness, she could sense Zephyrian fleets throughout the galaxy monitoring this conversation. The outcome of this discussion wouldn't just determine Earth's fate, it would decide whether an entire species could evolve beyond the mathematical limitations that had defined them for millennia. We offer you a choice, Maya said to the Zephyrian delegation. You can return to your collective consciousness and continue expanding through the galaxy using mathematical precision. You'll probably succeed in conquering most civilizations you encounter, but you'll never experience what we just showed you. Or, Fleet Commander Alpha asked, or you can learn to be individuals. It's harder. It's messier. You'll make mistakes that your collective consciousness would never make. But you'll also discover possibilities that no amount of mathematical optimization can reveal. Maya paused, accessing the full tactical and philosophical resources of the network. And if you choose individual consciousness, we'll teach you. Humans, Altarians, vegans, silicon collectives, and dozens of other species will share what we've learned about building civilizations based on cooperation rather than conquest. The Zephyrian delegation was silent for several minutes, their crystalline form shifting colors as they processed concepts that had no equivalent in their previous experience. Finally, Fleet Commander Alpha spoke. We have never encountered tactical approaches that prioritized long-term cooperation over short-term advantage. We have never observed civilizations that deliberately accepted inefficiency in exchange for adaptability. We have never experienced the phenomenon you call trust, but you want to learn? Maya asked. We want to understand why individual consciousness creates tactical possibilities that our collective models cannot predict. We want to experience the connection patterns that emerge from voluntary cooperation, rather than mathematical coordination. Maya felt something she hadn't experienced since before her transformation. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Through the network, she could sense the same emotion echoing through the consciousness of every Aurora Beta subject, amplified by their collective connection but still individually felt. Then welcome to the galaxy's first truly voluntary alliance, Maya said. Population, everybody who chooses to be here. Dr. Chen's consciousness touched hers through the network. The quiet girl in the back of the class just became the architect of galactic civilization. Maya looked around the gymnasium, at her classmates, at the Zephyrian delegation, at the representatives of dozens of alien species who were monitoring the conversation, and realized that her transformation was finally complete. She was no longer just a weapon designed to end a war. She had become something new, a bridge between mathematical perfection and chaotic creativity, between individual consciousness and collective purpose. The girl who had once sat alone at lunch, reading books about theoretical physics, was now coordinating the largest cooperative experiment in galactic history, and for the first time since her transformation, Maya Chen felt genuinely, completely human.